percentage can be deceiving. It sometimes is a better gauge, but in other ways it's not, because whether you're flipping a $100,000 house or a $300,000 house, the work is about the same.
Every single person I talked to said I was a nut. You're crazy. You're buying in North Birmingham. You're crazy.
Yeah.
But what that did is it gave me freedom to be in there all by myself. The only person that needs to believe in you is you.
The mindset, the mental toughness it takes to be in real estate, and specifically flipping, I mean, it's one of the things that's pushed me the hardest in my life. Welcome to Cash Flow Bros podcast. I've got Rob Malcom with me today. Rob, how's it going, man?
Bro, look, I know that your podcast is all about used cars, but I'd love to talk about real estate.
You're like, listen, I'm going to pivot a little bit here. So, when I initially started doing these interviews, you were like on the top 10 list. I'm not going to lie. And, because we met, I think at REI Live. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I had heard about a guy who was flipping a ton of houses in a place called Norwood. And we can talk about that down the road. But it was kind of well known about this, this couple that was flipping in Norwood. But I was pretty green. I didn't know a lot of people in the community. I'm still networking and stuff. And basically I came across you and I was like, man, this guy's a dynamic character. Like he's definitely brings the energy into the room. And then we went out that night. Brian invited us all to go out to eat.
We didn't go out.
Yeah. A group of us went out that night. And I was like, oh, you're the guy who's been flipping in Norwood, and really kind of changing that whole area. So that's kind of where I want to start is talk about, you flipped over 300 houses. Mm-hmm. So you know a thing or two about flipping houses. You've been in real estate, you and your wife, but where did the whole Norwood thing get on your map? Where did it all start, and how did you start pushing that as part of your business model?
It's actually pretty interesting. So at the time I was introduced to Norwood, excuse me, I was working for a ministry that was helping men and women come out of prison. Mm-hmm. And we were looking at that Caraway Hospital as a project that we could do to house more people and help more people. Right?
Oh, okay.
And in doing so, I saw this house across the street that was for sale, and I was like, wow, if that could be my house. Right now, I was coming out of, and this is a story we can talk about later, but I was coming out of homelessness, drug addiction, and whatnot. I found this house for $4,000, bro.
You said, sounds good to me.
It's my first
I've got
house.
$4,000.
I've got $4,000. I actually had $3,000. I had to borrow $1,000 from my dad. But I bought that house and started renovating it so that I could live in it. And I was living in, let's just be honest, a $4,000 house.
Wow. Okay?
I was like, hey, let's pull the blinds out of this window. When we did, the whole wall fell out into the grass.
Dude,
it was
nuts.
A $4,000 house. I lived in that house for several years while I was renovating it.
Wow.
And what happened is we had vacant houses all around us, and there was always running out people that were smoking crack and doing crazy stuff in these empty houses next door. And, I had lived in this house. I had put it together. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
With gum and a little bit of duct tape.
Good money on it. But I saw this couple. Now, I'd been in this house. It had already been finished, and I'd been living there for several years. And I saw this couple peeking through the window of this vacant house next door.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are they doing? I'm going to go run them off, just like I'd run everybody else. Hey, what are y'all doing anyway? They said, man, we want to live in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so I said, I tell you what, y'all come over here. Let me show you my house. I'll sell it to you. And now my house wasn't even for sale at the time. So my wife's like, what are you doing? I was like, babe, I'm going to sell our house. Walked this couple through the house. They loved it. Matter of fact, the lady said she had been dreaming about that specific house.
Wow.
She knew what the bathroom looked like before she walked in there. It was a crazy story. But about 5 months later, I got a call from a real estate agent that says, hey, my client wants to buy your house. Well, we're in real estate. I was like, which one? Your house. And I'm like, I got like 4 of them. Which one? It was the one we were living in.
Yeah.
And so I realized that there was some people were interested in the neighborhood more than just me.
Right.
And we sold that house, and I started buying other houses in the neighborhood. And back then, we were buying them for $12,000, $8,000.
Yeah.
The very first one we did, we sold for $88,500. And then the last one we did, we've sold for 470
Man, that's crazy.
over an 8-year span. Yeah.
It's amazing to see, and we kind of had talked about it's like the slow and gradual belief in a neighborhood can really change it. And I mean, because Norwood is located so close to downtown.
Man, it's so awesome.
And you have these gorgeous, beautiful homes, and it's just unfortunate. There's been some dilapidation, and it's just kind of fallen apart. But so that was over an 8-year period of time. So in total, how many did you flip in Norwood? And I'm assuming you still flip in Norwood, or is it the priced out to where it's like the numbers don't make sense?
I'm actually in work on one, but it's very hard for me personally to buy a house now and put the money that it takes to make it right and get it sold and make a profit.
That's true, because we were talking that night, and I was like, okay, so you're flipping, and I'm like, how much money are you putting in here? You know, and I'm thinking like maybe 100,000, and you're like, bro, it's like 200K.
Yeah.
I mean, you are basically rebuilding it.
I'm putting $100 a square foot in these houses is what it is.
Yeah. So. And you're doing it right. Yeah. And you're taking it down to studs, redoing all the wiring. I mean,
there's a big difference. Like at some point, the last house we sold, it hit the market on the same day we had it under contract. In the same period of time, in the same time frame, there was 19 other houses that were listed in our neighborhood that had an average of 56 days on the market.
Wow.
And so I think the difference is you can just say, hey, man, somebody's making a lot of money here, and I'm just going to slap a little stuff. Those houses won't sell.
No.
Like we found a very small niche, and there's a very small group of people already that want to live in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
You have to serve them.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just slam something up and hope that somebody comes to buy it.
Yeah, when I did a flip in Eastlake, and that's kind of another transitional, area. And right before I went to list, I toured the other listings that were just hanging out. And not in a prideful way, but my flip blew them out of the water because of my attention to detail, my excellence factor. I mean, now I probably over rehabbed the property a little bit. I mean, we were replacing the OSB, we were replacing like flooring joists. I mean, I basically rebuilt that house too.
Stuff that people can't see.
Yeah. And so I mean, we put a center beam in the middle of the house and jacked it up. And so probably not close to probably what you do, but pretty similar. And so all that to say is, it did a lot better and actually sold compared to the stuff that's sitting, because it was just like poor workmanship, rolling floors, like tons of rolling floors.
And multiple different floors? Like,
yes.
Come on, let's...
Like, just put all the same flooring in, okay?
Right.
So that's awesome that you put that attention to detail, and it obviously showed in the flips, and people would walk all the other probably 14 houses, and then they land on yours and are like, this is the one.
Yeah.
And then you get multiple offers. So that's amazing. So you found a niche, you kind of honed in on it, and you started flipping. You flipped over 47, still doing some activity, but it's kind of tapered off. I saw actually Joseph Holt, you know him.
Yeah.
He was saying something like the power of real estate and posted this house. It's in Norwood. It is literally a shell, and it was listed for 200. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. So you were buying stuff like that for 8 years ago.
Yeah. On the bigger houses, we were paying like 30.
Oh,
but still,
so much money.
Yeah. We were like, do we
really want to go 30? But you're putting like 200, 250 into some of these houses.
Yeah, and then in perspective, we were only selling those for a small margin. So you can't look at just the purchase price. You have to look at the sales price on the back end, right? Yeah. Everything went up at the same time.
So talk to me through, did you go into it just being like, ultimately, I see a niche and I have a passion for this area, and I know how to flip these houses. Most people won't tackle that big of a project, even though the margins weren't necessarily as nice.
Got tipped off a little bit.
Okay.
Like for me, a tip. I was living in that house, and for some reason I was there in the afternoon. I get a knock on the door, the one on Caraway Boulevard.
Yeah.
I bought for $4,000, and it was a realtor who's well known in the Birmingham area, and he said he was representing the city of Birmingham, and he wanted to see if he could get our house under contract. Now this was way back planning stage for them tearing the bridges down at I-59, and so I was like, something's up. Come in here and talk to me in my home office. And I wanted him to know I'm not just a regular homeowner that you can buy my house for $15,000, right?
Yeah.
So we get to talking, at that point, they were trying to buy all the houses on the west side. I think that's the west side. Yeah, of 31.
Okay.
Where that they could expand Highway 31. They were going to drive traffic down 31 into town when they tore the bridges down.
Interesting.
So I started thinking, man, I need to sell my house, and that's about the time those folks came peeking through the
Right,
windows.
right.
But in thinking that, I was like, man, there's a lot of movement happening here. A
Yeah.
lot of movement. Let's start buying some houses. Now, it was a gamble, and I'll tell you, every single person I talked to said I was a nut. You're crazy. You're buying in North Birmingham. You're crazy.
Yeah.
But what that did is it gave me freedom to be in there all by myself.
Yeah.
You know, the only person that needs to believe in you is you.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I believed in myself, and I was like, bro, nobody else is buying these
Yeah.
houses. It's
Yeah.
just us.
And then everybody rushed in. I wouldn't say rushed in. There's definitely a lot of people on the tail end, and they probably weren't either making the profit or they got, underwater because they didn't realize the rehab
It's
and
the
all the
same
different
thing as
things.
stocks, right?
Yeah.
Like you buy them early, you're good to go, but once they get up here, like what's
The margins
purpose?
aren't there.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about numbers. I'm curious to understand.
After I told you I wouldn't.
Yeah, you're like Todd. Oh, come on, but I ain't talking about numbers. And I'm like, let's talk about numbers. I know you don't pigeonhole. You're probably not a spreadsheet guy, and I get that. But you still know your numbers. You flip 300 houses. You're still doing it because you know your numbers.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you go into a property, are you looking for a percentage return, a flat fee return, or some combination of that? Like what is the go or no go on a property deal for you?
Got it. So for right now, it's 40,000.
Okay. So if you make a flat 40K, you're happy.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you're
it's easy
spending
for me to do the
500.
math.
Okay. Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
For me, the math is just so much easier doing that for me than having a percentage that I'm happy with. I want to make 40K. And so I just start with what am I going to sell it for? Minus out the commissions, minus out the half title and attorney, you
Right.
know, all the stuff, minus out
The lending fees and
the lending fees. And then what I think a lot of people forget when they're doing their maths, how much does my money cost? But they also forget about the termite bond they have to pay for and all the little crap. I just add like 2,000 and I call it asks.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
asking me for this and this and that. But yeah, and I'm subtract 40 for what I want to make, and at the end, that's my offer price.
Yeah.
And I just stand on it.
It's nice. So then your leverage of like money. So say you're flipping a $500,000 house. Your money is costing you way more than a $100,000 house, but you're happy with still 40 with all that $500,000 risk, or will you bump up that number a little bit?
Bump
Like
that number up. I haven't been selling a lot of $500,000 houses.
yeah,
Now, but in Norwood, the spread's just not there.
yeah.
Now, I'm going to let you in on a secret.
Everyone else, shut off the mics.
I'm not making money in Norwood.
Yeah.
Okay. We bought another personal house that we knew we were going to live in Norwood. And we bought a house for my daughter, and they're both on 29th Street.
Okay.
And the deal is, if I can sell houses for 450 and up to 500,000 in that neighborhood, it means the value of my house is coming up, my daughter's house is coming up.
Yeah.
Do I care if I make a huge profit? No. And you know what? People don't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this. Rob sold one for 470. And you know what? They're not making a profit either. But I mean, that's not my business to go out telling everybody,
Yeah. The margins are too tight now.
I've brought the value of my house up and my daughter's house up.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't really matter if I flip in there or not, because I have a house that we're 350, and it valued at 650.
Right. So you're golden.
Boom. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you have like, a killer house with historic value. I mean, there's some gorgeous homes. I mean, I see that in Woodlawn too. I mean, there's a lot of really pretty houses in Woodlawn, and that's an interesting thing. So yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I also thought a lot about the velocity of money. And so, for example, I just picked up a small condo reno, and I'm honestly probably not going to make a crazy amount on it, nowhere near 40K, but I think it's a carpet and paint 2-week job, and I relist it and make some money and move on. And for me, I'm like, is it the sexiest deal? Probably not, but it keeps the wheels turning, and it's worth it to me. And it's so fast.
Have you thought about who the buyer is on the back end, if they're conventional or FHA?
On that one, I think it'll go. It's a condo, and I think it would go both. It's in the Skyview, so their condo HOA is pretty solid. We've sold several.
The reason I ask is because I had some very similar. I was like, oh man, I'm in and out of this thing 2 weeks. And what I didn't take into consideration is the person that's going to buy my house is going to qualify for an FHA loan.
Right.
And I have to hold this property for 91 days before it can go under contract.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
So
see
all
what you're
the
saying.
little bit of sexiness that was there was long glossed over. It was
Oh,
gone.
yeah. No, I hadn't
I'm
thought
like,
about
crap.
that. I need to look back because I think we've put a few under contract and some have gone conventional. So that does put me in a pigeonhole. That's really smart. I didn't think about that. I think that some might be FHA. I'm going to look back now. And maybe that's something.
You got to hold it for at least 3 months instead of 2 weeks.
Yeah, maybe something I work out and kind of try to figure out that. But see, that's why I have this podcast, because I'm learning, like, as we talk. I'm like, oh shoot.
Now that we've been caught like that before, and we found the perfect buyer,
Yeah.
and we knew this house is for her, and we had to actually do a mutual release, and with her giving us a letter of intent that she was going to stay in the game, right, and so we just took it down, and at day 91, she came back in, made the offer, and we got it done.
Nice. That's awesome. So, okay, so roughly 40K. If you're risking more, you're going to want a little bit more. And if you're risking maybe a little less, then you might budge on that 40K. But you think less percentage, you think more like a flat fee. Because it's an interesting thing, because percentage can be deceiving. I think it sometimes is a better gauge, but in other ways it's not, because whether you're flipping a $100,000 house or a $300,000 house, the work is about the same. You still got to go in and figure out your scope of work. You still got to go in and replace the floors. You still got to paint it. You still have,
Yeah,
so,
and tubs cost the same, and 2x4s cost the same.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, I like kind of the flat fee model too. But I had an investor kind of reach out, and they were wanting 30% returns. And I was like, I honestly don't think I'm seeing any flippers get 30% returns right now. The cost of supplies and the cost of labor are still really high. They're pinching the deals.
Talk about labor, right? So like, so many people, and I mean, we could talk for hours on what's going on with labor. And I have my own views, and sometimes they're not exactly in line with popular opinions.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people running businesses that don't know how to bid work. They don't know they depend on us as the investors to tell them, this is how much I'm going to pay you.
Right.
So for a lot of these guys, they take the material cost and double it, and that's what they charge.
Interesting.
A lot. And so what happened is during COVID, when the materials went way, way up, so did their labor price. And we were all like, what's going on? None of us could afford all this stuff. Well, materials came way back down, not to where they were, but the price of labor did not. And now this is how much materials cost, this is how much the labor
Because they were
cost.
used to getting paid for that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So it's really not a proper bidding. I've noticed, though, some contractors reaching out to me lately and saying if I have work.
Same here.
And so we're working on a Hueytown flip, and I'm working with Joe, and I told Joe, I was like, you need to get more bids, because I was like, the prices are coming down, and maybe not aggressively, and maybe the pain's not fully there, but everybody's got mouths to feed. And it's starting to kind of pull back a little bit into more of, I'm all about paying people what's worth, they're fair. But I think the labor prices have been inflated. Very
much so. Like, I have a guy that's been begging me to come do some showers. He knows that I've got 3 showers that are ready to go. And I was like, hey, man, these are $800 towel showers. No. And I was like, and so I iced him, because, I'm doing all this other stuff. And he called me last night and said, "Hey, I want to come look at those. Let's go ahead and move forward." Of course.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any other work. You're not going to charge me $2,000. You know, I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Susie Homemaker.
Yeah. If you want the bulk work, then you got to give me bulk pricing. So, well, that's interesting. So I want to dive into you and your wife started Exit Really Birmingham.
Yeah.
3 years ago.
3 years ago this week.
Yeah, let's talk about how it's going. Congrats on the anniversary. That's awesome.
Appreciate it. So we currently have 47 real estate agents at our office. And our goal, mine and my wife's goal, is to have 65 by the end of this year.
Wow. That's awesome.
So, it's tough. Owning a brokerage is a lot tougher than I thought it would be.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just you're responsible for a lot of folks. I figured, okay, we're all grown. These people will do this. And this and that. It's just not like that. Right?
Yeah. What do you get into, because I know that I've had a few discrepancies with contracts and different stuff, and I end up having to level it up to the broker level of my broker and be like, hey, you two brokers talk, because I'm telling this other agent what the contract. Do you have to deal with that on a daily basis, or is that just
I'm super
hit or
lucky
miss?
because my wife is professional. Every single thing is done perfect in contract wise, and then she also sits on the grievance committee with Bar.
Oh,
and
okay.
so she understands, hey, these
The nuances,
dealing with this bad problem because of this. We're never going to do it, right?
Yeah.
She's able to take a lot of that information and help us grow a better brokerage.
It's awesome.
But she deals with all that. If you're asking me about any of that, I'm like,
Yeah, like different person.
Yeah.
Which we talked about getting Shannon in here, which would be great. But so you started that. How has that helped you grow as a leader and as an investor and as a realtor yourself? Because you buy and sell property every day.
So as a leader, once I started being around so many more people, I'm used to being around contractors and subcontractors where you can throw a nail gun at somebody and be like, you're an idiot, right? You can't do that in the real estate
They're a little
world.
more sensitive.
It's a lot more sensitive, right?
You said not a little, just a lot more. That's hilarious.
So we felt it very important that we went and got a coach. And so Shannon and I both have coaches that are teaching us how to level up. And through his coaching with us, it pretty much just spills over and we're able to coach our agents, based off of what we're learning. And his coaching is not cheap.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. And I feel like with us being able to take and transfer that to our agents, man, we're able to give them a lot of really good stuff.
Right. Yeah, and you download it to them. You get the source. You download it to them. I think it's such a key thing of like, in our families, in our businesses, we have to find a source because we're constantly giving. I want to be a giver. I want to be, helping others. And, ultimately you have to find, the source, whether it's training, another podcast, a coach, some form of pouring into yourself, or else you'll just run dry and then you'll burn out. So you've been flipping, I guess, 300 homes, I guess, over the course of 10 years, give or take?
Yeah, we started in 2012.
Okay, gotcha. And now let's step back all the way into your past, because I did want to kind of talk about that. You kind of came from some rough things. Did you go right into real estate, or what was that journey progression from where you came to like settling to where your career is now?
So Shannon and I lived in a Mitsubishi Eclipse.
It's a good start.
Yeah. Okay. Now, that's worse than living in a van.
Yeah.
All right. There's levels.
You can attest to it.
There's levels, okay? You can't stretch your legs out in a Mitsubishi Eclipse. It's pretty rough. We made some really, really bad life choices and found ourselves living in a car.
Yeah.
And, through a series of events, both of us got we're extremely lucky that we had a lot of people behind us. We ended up joining a really good church, and those people, of our church, just really stood behind us and helped push us up.
That's awesome.
But no, I didn't go directly into real estate. I had a background in construction. So because of some of my past decisions, I wasn't able to get a job, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, not too many people were real high on. Oh, look at this guy, like. So I was working for a ministry that was helping men and women come out of prison.
Okay.
And inside of that ministry, I set up a small construction company. At that time, we called it the Downtown Construction Company. We lived in a warehouse downtown.
Yeah.
And so I started just doing like maintenance for property management companies. And then we got connected through those property management companies doing maintenance for hedge funds.
Okay.
And I started to realize these guys are putting our neighbors and our people in our state and our community in crappy houses. And they just didn't care. They were from California or Israel, all these other places. They didn't even know what the name of the street was. You know what I mean? It was just this house, that house. Do it as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
Cardboard patches. They were doing garbage. And me, being as naive as I am, was like, I can do what they're doing, only better. So I found an old high school friend of mine. We became business partners and bought a house. And we did all the work ourselves. And at that point, we were stuck because we didn't know how to put tenants in, and we definitely didn't know how to sell it.
Yeah,
We knew how to do the construction work. We were sawzall and hammer guys. You know what I mean?
You're like, we're about a quarter of the way there.
Yeah.
What do we do next?
We had this one house, and we were 25% there. Well, we were doing maintenance on this property out in West End. It was a 25-door apartment building out behind the M&N grocery.
Yeah.
And I saw this guy who was so far out of place, Todd. He was so far out of place, right? I mean, he was pale like me, you know what I mean? But he was wearing a flat bill hat, and he had board shorts on, a backpack over both shoulders. Okay, you get the picture, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, Ben, I bet $20 that dude's from Utah. Nothing against my Utah friends, right? I know I got a lot of friends in Utah. And we went over and talked to him, and he was from Utah. And
You called it. You called it.
He was from Utah, but he was also a acquisition manager for a fund.
Oh, okay.
And he said, man, what do you guys do? And my partner says, oh, man, we buy houses and we flip them and we sell them to guys like you, right? And he goes, well, how many can you give us a month? Well, we can give you 5. Well, remember, we've done 1 in our career history, and we didn't know what to do with it.
You're like painting yourself into a corner right now.
Yeah.
I love it.
So he goes back, connects us with somebody from his office, and they gave us a letter of intent. They wanted 5. And so we went out and found them. Lucky for them that we had a conviction, you know what I mean? We did things ethically.
Yeah.
But man, we started having, bam, just like that, selling houses 5 a month.
So you would find
pictures.
them needing to get fixed up, fix them up, and then sell them.
We'd send, well, the way we were doing it back then is we were sending pictures, and we were sending, hey, this is a 3-bed, 2-bath, and it'll rent for, back then, $750.
Right.
And they were paying us based off the rent that our property manager could put in that house.
Okay.
So we figured, all right, how can we give a more quality house to these folks so that the people living in there will stay?
Yeah.
'Cause I think that's key when you own rental houses. Your tenants need to stay.
Yeah.
If you give them a garbage house that starts falling apart, they're leaving every 12 months. You lose every bit of money that you made.
Yes.
Right? So we figured out how to do a more quality house, and we figured out how can we spend just enough money where we can still make a profit. And back then, man, we were probably making $8,000 on a house. We were selling 5 a month, and we were brand new. We were happy.
Yeah.
But then,
You're going out to Taco Bell every night.
Dude, number 5, large scale. No, we were, once you start going into a different circle, other people from that new circle, you're part of that too, right? So not only did we have that one fund, but we eventually had 5 different funds that were asking us to service them with multiple houses a month. So it turned into a really good deal for us.
I mean, you were turning them out at that point. You probably had multiple crews.
Well, check this out. So I was still working at the ministry.
Okay.
Right? Now, these guys were getting early release from prison under our custody. And so they could either sit at the center and do classes all day long, or they could go work. Well, what do you think they chose? They wanted to go work. And the deal is I could pay them, back then it was $10 an hour, just straight. You don't get cut for anything. Well, we were working 15, 16-hour days, you know? I mean,
Wow.
it's basically either do that or go back to a prison atmosphere, just not at the prison. So I was very lucky at the time to have that kind of labor. I think we ended up having like 20 people that would go out on any given day. I had a school bus that we converted, and we put everybody on the school bus and
Just
left.
run.
Yeah, man, it was awesome.
How was that training process? Was that difficult at times to be like, hey, like you may have had this level of excellence before in the way you did your life, but we're going to be here?
Yeah. I took a lot of pride in taking men that didn't know anything other than like selling dope on the corner to teaching them a trade.
Yeah,
and so
that's awesome.
I had the because we were working for that 501c3, I was getting paid through them, so we could do our projects a little slower if you had to try to figure out these guys. And I'm not saying it took a long, because I was go all the time. And if you couldn't figure it out real fast, you could sit at the center and I'll get somebody to replace you. So the guys figured that out. You know, I mean, humans, we're smart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if your back's against the wall, you're going to figure something out pretty quick.
Yeah.
And we were giving these guys an avenue to stack some cash while they were still considered locked up.
Yeah.
And have enough money to put down on an apartment and start a real life. Because let's be honest, the guys
and
that
have a
come out of
trade.
prison, and have a trade. They don't have a chance, man. They just don't have a chance.
Yeah. That's amazing, because I think there's a lot of pride too. Like, you know, this weekend, my wife's car actually broke down. And I got, you know, in all the trades, I mean, plumbers, HVAC guys, auto maintenance, I mean, everything's so expensive. So I got a quote for what I knew that would probably take me about 4 to 6 hours for $1,000. And I was like, you know, I know how to wrench on cars. My dad was a mechanic. So I was like, I'm going to do it. And ended up taking me 9 hours because I dropped a bolt. It was a huge mess. But all that to say, when at the end of the day, that car turned on and I felt the satisfaction of my own hand fixing something. You can't replace that inherent feeling as a person, the integrity of actually like putting your hand to something. And I think that pride that you would build up in those men was probably pivotal in a lot of their life change.
And mine.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing guys learn a trade and then get out, get their own apartment, and for 2 years later call me and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that my son graduated high school and he's living with me. Thank you. You know what I mean? Those calls came for years after I left there.
That's awesome. So during that process, did you really hone the craft of flipping? I mean, that was kind of your early stages of flipping. And by the quantity, I'm assuming you really learned your chops.
Yeah. So my dad flipped houses when I grew up. Like, we always lived in the neighborhood crapper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I had been around it, but I had never really, my hands, I grew up as a painter by trade, house painter.
Yeah.
So I'd been around some of that. But yeah, man, being able to flip that kind of volume, all of a sudden you learn.
Yeah.
Like, you learn code real fast. You learn code real fast because, to be honest, if you're not pulling permits, and we didn't a lot back then, they could pull up and shut your job down.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, oh, crap, okay, my toilet needs to be roughed in 15 inches from the wall and from center 15 inches to the vanity, right?
Yeah,
I can't just jam it in there. I learned a lot of that real fast.
And I would pull permits. Yeah, I mean, sometimes people don't pull permits, but as long as they're within code, you get a fee slapped on you, and you got to get, it takes time. But if you haven't done it to code, you're redoing the work.
You're in trouble.
You're up a river.
Yeah, and I think that, like, the biggest cost on any flip is the money, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Like, and so if your job gets shut down because you decided that you didn't want to pull permits, you're spending, your biggest cost is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger as you wait for them to be able to tell you when you can do it. And some of those inspectors take it personally.
Oh, yeah.
Like you cheated them out of some money and cards or something, right?
Not in my town.
Not in my town. It's true.
No, it's very true. I've heard, now we're getting to the fringe. Maybe, hopefully, we want to have an inspector on here, but but I've heard of some people kind of leaving a few things, minor things for inspector to find on the, like if you button everything up, they'll still find something.
Yeah.
So you might as well find some easy cheat ones.
I've never bought into that, but I've heard other guys that say that.
Yeah, they're like leave a box slightly open.
I'm
Be like,
willing to take that.
we'll get that taken care of. Good eye, sir.
I think the flip side of that is if you provide a really, really good house, if you're doing everything right and you provide a good house, the inspectors come out and they see it's right. Instead of leaving stuff for them where they're thinking, okay, well, now I have to come back because he leaves a freaking box open. Sometimes they'll just say, hey, send me a picture of that and I'll sign you off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because they know you're doing good work.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit with my Hueytown flip with Joe. I mean, he talked about previous ones he's done there, and he does things right. He's like, I'm not going to shortchange stuff. He had a good rapport with the inspector there, and I was like, all right, let's run this because, you already have that rapport. He already knows that, you do good work, and he signed off on previous stuff. So, and this was a burnout, so we're definitely pulling a permit.
I've had them
down
say,
to the studs.
Just walk in and go, where's the card? And I'm like, hey, man, look, I know you're in a hurry. Would you please just look it over? Look, I know that you know that I do things right.
Yeah.
And because it makes me feel like, hey, that's an extra, for me, it's an extra layer of protection. I'm selling a house to someone who's going to live in it.
Yeah.
Right? And they're spending, in most cases, the most money they've ever spent on anything in their entire life.
Yeah.
So if I can have that extra layer of protection, I don't mind doing the permit process. I want people to say, 3D Properties sold me this house, and it's an awesome house. Not, I had some freaking problems, and the plumber was here rooting out the, you know what I mean?
Right. Have you ever gone back post-sale and fixed on something?
Yeah. I have this problem where I want people to feel comfortable in the home I sold them.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, like right now I'm dealing with...
You say that like it's a problem. You're like, I have this problem. I care too much.
Yeah, I do. I do. But like and it's not in that exact box, but to answer your question, yes. Right now, I sold a house, I think last Thursday. And I'm probably going to be there most of this week doing some grade work in the front yard. Now, that could have been done 2 weeks ago, except it was 13 degrees and we were trying to push dirt and it was just like a glacier moving, right?
Yeah.
And so I told them, hey, if we want to keep this and you want to keep your date, my word, I'll come back and do this. So that's a little different.
Yeah, it's a more of a weather inclement thing. You would have had it on the front end if it wasn't.
It would have been done.
We had that cold snap, yeah.
Man. But
Pretty
I'll
rough.
tell you this, I have a lady that bought a house from me, I don't know, this has been 6 years ago. And she wanted it real bad, and she decided that instead of hiring a home inspector, her brother was going to come to her. Her cousin, somebody in her family did the home inspection for her. She called me or started calling me like 5 years after she bought the house, saying that paint was peeling on her deck. Well,
it's outside.
damn, really? Yeah. She sent me some really ugly messages 5 years later. She wants me to come fix stuff on her house. You just have to block that sometimes.
Yeah, that's way beyond the warranty.
If you call me inside a year, I'm usually going to come out and fix something.
Yeah.
I do enough volume where I have to have a good name.
Yeah. Something I learned a long time ago when I got into freelance work, because I used to do a lot of creative content, and he was a DJ, really great guy, but he was like, your name is the most important thing you have. And he's like, whether you get paid $0 or $1 or $1 million, you need to do the same exact work. And I've done it before where I underbid a project and I'm like, shoot, man, like I feel like I'm gypping myself because my level of excellence is here. And it doesn't change.
Yeah.
Like, cause that's who I am. It's inherent in the way I operate my life. So unfortunately, I just feel like I'm shortchanged the whole time because I'm putting in this level of excellence. And I've honestly learned to not underbid anymore because, at the end of the day, I want people to value me because I value me. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're not on the same train, then that's fine. We just won't do business together. Yeah.
I mean, they say the best investment you can make is here, right?
Yeah.
This is your first and best investment, then make all your other investments.
Yeah. So you believe, you personally have coaches, you believe in coaches, but you also are a coach.
Yeah.
So, and luckily it's not in something that you don't know about. It's something that you've done over 300 times.
Yeah.
And talk to me about kind of what you do, how you help people. You know, I've seen your content, honestly, because I've flipped some houses nowhere near, and I'm like, maybe I should get on Rob's coaching thing, because I think you bring a lot of value in someone who has the idea that they want to make flipping either part of their career or a side hustle or whatever, but they don't want or have the time to necessarily put those years and years of time in, and you can help shortcut a lot of those headaches.
For sure. So what I do, I charge $10,000 up front. And that's to keep you in the game.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, my perfect person to coach is someone who's already flipped several houses, to be honest with you, that just maybe hasn't been great profitable, or just doesn't understand feels like they tripped through the whole thing, or maybe a subcontractor took advantage of them. I will coach people who have never flipped. It's a little bit harder for me, and it takes a lot more time. But what happens is, man, I walk my mentees all the way through the whole process.
Yeah.
And then we split the profits. So it's an investment. You're not paying me. You're getting your money back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's guaranteed too.
That's awesome. Yeah, because like it's interesting. You're like, I need you to get you beat up a little bit on a few deals first, but that is true, because like that you learn a lot in those first few ones, and then you can kind of take them from like, okay, now I know that you have the grit to finish a project. I know that you know a little bit better of what it takes. There's no just like pie in the sky. This is just all like cotton candy.
Yeah.
Let's actually get to work and help you make this a successful part of your life.
I have two that I'm working at with the same time right now, and we get on. I do a Zoom call once a week, and we talk about what worked, what didn't work, and what to fix. Right, inside of what we're doing. And I was getting like, "Hey, this is a great deal," and my first answer, "What's the ARV?" Because I've paired each one of these guys with a real estate agent. You know? And they were getting so aggravated, both of them so aggravated. When they were ready just to go get it. And unless you give me the ARV,
you don't know if it's a deal.
I'm not going to even look at it. And I had one of them call me and go, "Are we ever going to do anything?" I was like, "As soon as you get on board with, Yeah. And he goes, "Well," and I said, "Let me ask you something. Are you coachable?"
Oh,
well, yeah. I was like, "Okay, next time you send me something, send me the ARV with it."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he did that. The very next one had it. It had all the numbers I asked him for. Boom. I was like, let's take it down.
Done.
Yeah. We're almost done with that one.
That's
very excited about it for him. Yeah.
That's great, man. It's so funny, because like to me that's the 101, but some people need a little bit more encouragement, I guess, to be like, oh yeah, I'll do the ARV. Or do you do, when you do an ARV? Because a lot of times I like to give my clients, and I personally do this for my own flips, I do a range. I have like low end and a high end, like worst case and best case scenario. Is that kind of in the pocket of your mind?
It probably should be. I guess I'm a little cocky, because I'm like, hey, if the highest in the neighborhood is sold for 205, we're going to sell ours for 208.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're not blowing it out. We're going to get it right in there where an appraiser can say, okay, same bed, same bath, a little bit nicer, we'll give it to you. So I always try to take the highest end on whatever I'm doing.
Gotcha. I've noticed that with another guy who flips in town. There were several deals I competed with him on, and he won, unfortunately, one of them. But I just was like, let's talk out the deal. What were your numbers? Because I know my numbers, and I want to see if I was right, because you have 10 times the amount of experience that I do. And it was the same thing. I'm really conservative, because I'm thinking of the rainy day, and I wouldn't say I'm overly cautious, but I'm a cautious when I approach that. And I think he knew his numbers and his level of excellence, that he just pushes the high end. Yeah. He knows, like, he was honestly 15 above every other comp, and he's like, I'll get it. Yeah. He knows he'll get it, because people walk it, they see the quality, and they're like, we got to have this. This is the house we want.
I think also, and it's worth talking about, is building a brand. Don't just flip a house from Joe Schmuckatelli, right?
Yeah.
And then me and my other part.
No offense to
build
the
a brand.
Smuckatellis out
the
there.
Schmuckatellis, they're awesome. I love them. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I've built a brand around 3D, and so not saying that it's this huge thing, but a lot of people know it and they trust it, and when they see that,
Yeah.
they're willing to take that house down a lot of times under their real estate agent's guidance because they know I'm giving a quality product.
Yeah, there's a few guys in town that flip on a pretty regular basis and have a good name for themselves. And the realtors who work a lot, which, let's be honest, most realtors, there's probably 20% that do 80% of the work in town. And those that know who is flipping regularly say, this one's good, this one's not.
Yeah.
And it goes back to your name. Your name is everything. And even I say with out of state. So I've worked with other clients that are out of state, and they do either flipping or they do rentals or whatever. And I'm like, you may only have one or two, but if you want to grow, this network of realtors and investors is actually relatively small. Like, a lot of people know a lot of people, and you can create a good name or a bad name for yourself, And I'll have even some clients reach out, or they're not my clients, but potential clients. They're like, I want to offer this, or they back out of contracts. Like, I'll work with another buyer's agent, and that buyer backs out for horrible reasons. Mm-hmm. And I just tell them, I'm like, you need to tell your client they're not going to be playing this game very long in this town. It's going to be a short game because their name will get around. And trust me, when their name comes back across my docket, I'm going to have to tell my client, this is my previous experience with this buyer.
This is a very small town.
Very small town.
It's a very small town. Like, for a mid-sized town, it's very small. Like, everybody knows what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
Especially in the real estate world.
Yeah. So you gotta keep your name up and everything. Well, this has been fantastic. How can people, if they're interested in your program or just interested in learning about exit, how do they get a hold of you to have conversations?
One, I think if you're interested in becoming a real estate agent in our brokerage, just look up Exit Realty Birmingham. So something very quick is, I hear what you're saying, 20% of the agents do 80% of the work. And what Shannon and I are building is that 50% of all of our agents are doing that kind of work. You know what I mean? We're building a brokerage of all producers.
Yeah.
Instead of playing
takers.
the 20% number, we're going to build it up to that 65 like we talked about, and then start cutting it down.
Yeah.
So it's a very manageable group of people that are all just...
Yeah.
So we're excited about building that this year. And then we're all over. We're on Instagram and Facebook at 3D Properties.
Yeah.
But yeah, if someone's interested in the mentorship, man, they can just Google my name. My phone number's everywhere.
Yeah, we'll leave links in the show as well. Yeah. So, but I appreciate it, man. Like I said, I was really looking forward to having this conversation, more deep diving in some of your past, flips and kind of your take on it, because I'm early in on it. I've been doing flips, but I haven't hit 300 yet. Yeah. So maybe one day. And just your insight, I think, is valuable. I love too that when you walk into a room, you bring the energy, number one, but you also make people feel seen. Yeah. I think you're very good at making sure everybody feels valued. That's and awesome. You've done that for me. I'm a nobody,
whatever.
And you always make me feel like I'm seen. So I really appreciate it. I
ask you a question. You said at first when you started this podcast that I was on your top 10 to come in here. What number am I? Oh no! I'm like, I just 60.
A general 10. It's a general 10.
I've seen a lot of videos. I'm not in top 10.
Well, I just started the interviews recently. Okay. So yeah, so you were on the top 10 because I started the interviews in December. So we have a lot of the three of us. Yeah. But as far as interviews, I think you're probably episode. Man, you probably are in the top. Like at least 10, or if not, definitely top 15. Okay. I don't think, because I started in December.
So I wasted a lot of mental, when you said top 10, I was like, wait a minute.
There's a lot more episodes. No, it's interesting because the podcast thing, we started it in the summer, and it was just audio, and then it turned into video. And to be honest, like I was really encouraged. We kind of created it just to try to help people. And then you look at podcasts, everybody wants to start a podcast. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody, right? It's the thing to do if you want to have a voice and all that kind of stuff. And I believe in it. I think it's great. But my goal is to help others. It's not really about me or Rob or Jordan. But there's a stat that basically you're in the top 1% of producers if you hit 21 episodes.
Oh, wow.
And it's so interesting because what a mark on our society that you do something so 21 times and you put yourself in the top 1%.
That just so many people give up so fast.
Yeah. And the same thing with flipping. I mean, we didn't really talk about it too much. And now we've wrapped up this episode and going back into it, which is totally fine. The mindset, the mental toughness I think it takes to be in real estate and specifically flipping. I mean, it's pushed me. It's one of the things that's pushed me the hardest in my life.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that mindset was always there and you've just honed it, or it built itself through the failures and the successes?
I truly feel like not everybody is made to flip houses. Like,
yeah.
It seems easy, and it is so not. Like, on all my content, I put
HGTV.
flipping ain't easy, right? Yeah. It's not.
No.
Flipping ain't easy. I think I was born with a mental toughness, I guess, right? Like Rocky. I can take the punches and get back up. And it's like what you're saying in the podcast. Like, if you're in the 1% after 21 episodes, what does that say? It means people quit only doing 19 or 20 episodes or less. Like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I think with real estate, it's so hard because you're dealing with people, one, that don't want to come to work. Let's just be honest. We're also in a shortage of trades.
Yeah.
You know, like we knew that before COVID, that there was a shortage of plumbers, a shortage of HVAC people in the trades. And then when COVID happened, a lot of the people that were in that weren't ready to retire went ahead and retired.
Yeah, they're like, I'm done.
I'm done.
Yeah.
So now we have a super shortage of trades. And I don't know, man. It's really, really hard to keep a schedule. So I like calendar out my schedule for what I'm doing I'm working on 5 different flips at a time, and this guy has to be here to make this. Well, if the plumber doesn't show up to do his roughs, it doesn't just affect him, and he thinks that most of the time. It affects every single person all the way back. But what it does the worst for me is just because he's 3 days late doesn't mean my whole project's 3 days late. Because the drywall guys were scheduled to come in this amount, like this calendar day. Well, they're off to do another job when they miss those 3 days. I might not get them for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So that plumber calling you up and say, hey, I'm sick today, could be a 2-week delay.
Yeah, or longer.
Just like that.
Because all the other guys are plugged in. They've got to feed their family. They're not just let's wait on the plumber.
Yeah.
No, they go somewhere else to make their money, and then they got to fit you in when they can fit you in.
Yeah.
It's awful. So taking those punches is terrible. But then, you know, I said I don't make a lot of money in Norwood. The last house I sold, I had to bring a $2,000 check to the closing table.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
Like, even when I did my net sheet, I'm like, oh, well, you know, I'm going to make it looked like I was going to make about $900. You know, I'm like, at least I didn't lose. Well, I get there.
Well, guess what?
I get there, and the closing attorney goes, hey, do you got a check? And I'm like, for what?
Ouch.
Oh, man. Second one in my career.
Yeah.
Second loss in my whole career.
It's great to talk about the failures. And I wouldn't even call it a failure because my East Lake flip, I think I made like $1,000, $2,000. Yeah. I can't remember, but it was not a win. I was there a year.
God, nobody talks about that.
It was just
brutal. You don't ever see that on HGTV, right?
No.
Made $80,000.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and anybody who's, you know, the guy who created the Amazon, you know, e-commerce store. Well, potentially he created 5 or 6 stores that completely went heads up before the one that he finally found the job, or he or she did. So I think that's true, is just we lack, and I'm speaking for myself. I tell myself this a lot. we lack the ability to sustain good decisions towards an objective for long enough. We just way underestimate the amount of time it takes to get things done.
Yeah.
And so I just, when things are not moving as fast as I'd like them to, I just remind myself, like, it's just keep putting it to the, keep doing the same thing every day, and eventually it will go. It's just probably going to take a little bit longer than you thought.
It will. A little hint that I started doing recently is I'm okay with a 2-week coming soon. So I'm setting, all right, not only do I want my project to be finished here, I'm going to have a 2-week coming soon, and then I'm going to list here on my calendar. Well, if I have a 10-day push, I just suck up into that coming soon. I still put coming soon because I can.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? But my list date stays the same. I'm not changing my list date now.
Yeah.
That has helped me tremendously. I've built a little buffer in the back end.
Yeah, that's smart. That's awesome, man. Well, thanks for the time, man.
Yeah,
I
bro,
appreciate it. I learned a ton, and I'll just keep pinging you when I have other questions.
Yeah, dude, anytime.
So, I appreciate the time, and if anybody reached out to you, I hope that you have just great conversations with them. So
this was awesome. Thanks for having me, bro.
Take it easy.